Kia ora everyone, my name's Zach, I love rugby, welcome back to Hakatime Rugby. The dust is finally settled, hangovers have been cured, and it's time to discuss the final with clear heads and objective minds. I'm going to give you my view on the final, and to do so, I'm going to go into the statistics of the game because I think they reveal some fascinating insights that ultimately tell what I believe should be the true story of the game. But before I do that, I want to send a huge congratulations to South Africans, a huge congratulations to the Springboks. To win a fourth World Cup is historic. To go back-to-back just shows the measure of this team, and to do so with that difficulty level, getting through Ireland, getting through Scotland, France, England, the All Blacks in the final, to do so with nail-biting contests from quarterfinal, semi-final, and final, and ultimately to innovate throughout it. It's a testament to the team, and it's a massive achievement, and just a huge congratulations. And it's worth celebrating. I think there's a public holiday coming up for this win, so I hope you all enjoy that. It's very, very much deserved. From an All Blacks perspective, All Blacks fans are still grieving, but I do hope that, very quickly, with clear heads and objective minds, that focus starts to turn towards pride, because that's the overwhelming emotion that I feel towards the All Blacks. They were not fancied coming into this Rugby World Cup. There's a number of well-documented losses, historic negative firsts for Fozzie and Sam Cane in terms of their coaching and captaincy regime. But at the end of the day, this All Blacks team turned it on when it mattered, right? And it was at that quarter final they were able to get through Ireland. The margins have been so small in this, but they did the job. They put themselves into a final, and they came so close to winning it all. So, as I say, as the dust settles now, I do hope that that's where the focus turns for All Blacks fans, because they've exceeded everyone's expectations and they've reminded the world exactly who the All Blacks are. And that also should be celebrated. And I think a lot of that narrative actually comes through in the statistics that I'm about to break down for you. There's so many interesting talking points on how the game ebbed and flowed, how it was ultimately won, and what it means in terms of the future of rugby. So, I'm going to dive into it very soon, but before I do that, as part of my prediction video, I gave a subscriber giveaway. So there were 2 potential prizes. I'm going to announce those at the end of this video, so stay tuned for that. So the final score is 12 points to 11, another nail-biter, another 1-point win to the Springboks. And we know that there's a lot of talking points, a lot of drama, and we can see here the red card. Now, I'm not going to focus on the cards and the interpretations of the ref in this video. I think it undermines the victory, and I think there's other more important talking points that I really want to cover. What I will say, though, from both the red card to Sam Cane, as well as the injury to Bongi Mbonambi, those 2 situations put both teams under significant adversity. There was a lot made about the 7-1 split coming in, and in particular the risk-reward ratio of the 7-1 split, and it was really around 2 areas where it looked like there were risks. 9 and 10 was obviously well documented. The other was at 2 because Dion Ferree was there as part-time, let's say, flexible cover there between 2 and back row, and he was called upon very, very early to stand in for Bongi Mbonambi. And it's heartbreaking for him. Obviously, he was injured there in 2019. Now he picks up an injury again in this final. It's got to be just gut-wrenching for him to not be contributing to victories the way others in the team are, and having to rely on your teammates to be able to get across the line. There were a number of people that had to rely on their teammates. Sam Cane is another. Obviously, he went off with the yellow card. And, there's a lot of discussion around whether or not that should be a red card or not. It was ultimately upgraded to a red card. And the bottom line is that Sam Cane was also put in a position to then watch the game and hope that his teammates got across the line. And, for both guys, it's a difficult situation. One under no control of Bongi, obviously. And even Shannon Frizzell, to a degree, that looked like an accident, albeit a fair enough penalty and a fair enough yellow card. And from Sam Cane's perspective, look, the interpretation is the interpretation. And he was red carded. And as I say, both teams now faced with significant adversity. And I want that to underpin this match, because when you actually look at it from the perspective of adversity, you actually see how heroic the performances were. The All Blacks down to 14 men, and in the first half had to adjust. Probably didn't adjust as well. Was certainly dominated in the forwards, I thought, particularly at the breakdown, and particularly at the rush defense perspective in the first half. But They were able to claw back, recollect themselves at half time, and then push forward and have successes in the second half. So, and ultimately, for a Enquiries perspective, coming in so early in the game, which ultimately he wasn't expected, being forced to play the rest of the game at hooker, he had a fantastic performance. He was great in the breakdown. He was fantastic in key areas of the game, and I think those two bits of adversity need to be remembered because they really did create heroic performances in the end. Now, if we look at some of the match stats, penalty goals 2-4. So, in terms of efficiency, obviously the All Blacks, they missed a couple of kicks here in terms of the conversion was missed and a penalty goal, up there near halfway was missed. So, those are two challenges you can very much look back at and say, had they have got those, then maybe they would have won. And this is why I don't focus on cards, right? I can look at a number of one-off scenarios in this game and say, if only this, then that. But we have no idea of knowing if that would have happened. Because let's say the 58th minute, Richie Mo'unga gets the conversion from the sideline and the All Blacks go up 13 points to 12. Then it changes the complexity of the game completely. The Springboks are forced to play, and who knows what would have happened, right? Let's say the All Blacks were affected by the rain and it didn't rain. Who knows what would have happened, right? At the end of the day, the results are the results, and the one-off moments, to me, are not as important as people suggest. What's more important is the trends that we start to see through the data. So, efficiency, those are two things in the All Blacks' control in terms of the kick percentage that were missed. Now, we have to give credit to Handre Pollard at this point. He's had a fantastic performance for the time he came in, the accuracy of his kicks, his game management, and his ability to win in big match moments. Just what a luxury being able to call in someone like that when it really matters. One, to get you home in a critical moment there against England, and two, to just provide that steady ship, particularly with the risks around the 7-1 split. So I think a big shout out needs to go to Handre Pollard. He was 100% kicking accuracy, and that's just fantastic from him. I do want to look at these stats, and shout out to Hendrik Cronje, who provided them, because these are more advanced match stats. And when we look at them, they start to paint a bit of a picture as well. So I focused a lot in my preview around ball and play time. You can see here, ball and play minutes, 38 minutes. What does that mean? Well, I can tell you that's the third highest ball and play minutes in this tournament, behind the All Blacks semi-final, 43 minutes I think it was against Argentina, and the quarterfinal, which is 41 minutes against Ireland. Now, that's significant because it really addresses a number of concerns that were raised by the All Blacks leading into this World Cup. The forwards aren't able to compete. And obviously there was a lot of talk made from Fozzie in terms of the ball and play minutes between Ireland and the Springboks during pool play. And that was really planting the seed of how the All Blacks intended to play. And ball and play minutes is not about playing fast. It's not about playing expensive rugby, and it's not about throwing the ball around. People get this completely wrong. What it's about is tiring your opposition. So if you have a 5-3 against 7-1, obviously the power game favors those with more forwards. Then one way to take the gas out of the bomb squad, as Jason Ryan put it, is to increase ball and play minutes. It means teams are forced to defend longer, and we saw that with a number of phases in the first half. It means you're attacking for longer stretches. So while it puts pressure on your own forwards, if you are conditioned and ready for that, it puts more pressure on those that are not ready for that. And that's an innovation that the All Blacks have introduced at this World Cup, and I think it's going to be something they take forward into the future. I really do think that that's an area the All Blacks can focus on to maximize their strengths and reduce the strengths of the opposition. And we actually saw that play out in some of the forward stats here. When we look at the scrum success, for example, 100%, 100%. Now, I think there was one scrum where the All Blacks were able to put pressure on the Springboks, and that was namely when the second unit came in. So I think the All Blacks forwards really, really stood up here. And to have scrum parity with such, a significant scrummaging unit, and even to win or disrupt some of the Springboks scrums, I know there was one, then that just shows that the All Blacks were able to stand up in that key moment. We don't know how much it was down to their technique versus, this ball and play minutes, but I do know that this is starting to paint a picture that the All Blacks had a lot of success in the forwards, particularly in that second half. Lineouts considered, the All Blacks lineout has been fantastic all tournament. In this portion, they put a lot of pressure under the Springboks line-out. Maybe part of that was because Deon Fourie was involved in the game for long stretches. Maybe part of it was because the All Blacks line-out was operating so efficiently. I think it's both factors, but at the end of the day, the All Blacks had success there at set piece in both parts of set piece. Fantastic work from there. Ultimately, the strategy that was being implemented by Fozzie, Jason Ryan, it really started to pay dividends. Territory and possession. So these numbers are slightly off compared to others. Others are showing sort of 57% territory advantage versus 43% territory advantage to the Springboks. That's territory advantage. Possession stats, 60-40 is sort of the common thread that I'm seeing across most advanced statistics. So the All Blacks have possession and territory throughout the game as well. Again, back to set piece, scrum win percentage, 91%, 100%, and line-out possession as per the previous stats that we showed. So what this suggests to me is that the game plan that the All Blacks tried to implement, I touched on this as part of the prediction series. They got what they wanted here, and that is despite going down to 14 men. So I think those points really need to be celebrated from this All Blacks, that they were under significant adversity and they were able to really compete, and not only that, give a really good account of themselves throughout the course of this game. They won the second half, and it seemed like they were really on top in the second half. Attacking stats sort of highlight this point as well. So more passes, more carries, more post-contact meters. And then we start to get into some of the more interesting stats. So while the All Blacks dominated the set piece, I thought two big advantages that the Springboks had. One was at the breakdown. There was a sense of urgency there, and we saw some great work there. I thought Deon Fourie was just amazing. I thought that Pieter-Steph du Toit, incredible. His rush defense play was just fantastic. And the other major area that the Springboks had success in was the high ball. The kick chase was fantastic. Kurtley Arendse, disruptive, as well as Cheslin Kolbe. We saw Damian Willemse chasing for kicks. They were extremely disruptive in the high ball, and the All Blacks were making a lot of uncharacteristic mistakes. So they'll look back and think that, there's a lot of errors that they made there which really were uncharacteristic. And if we go into some of the more advanced stats and we look here at turnovers conceded, you can see here the picture that's painted here from the All Blacks backs. 5 turnovers conceded by Beauden Barrett, 3 for Will Jordan, 3 for Jordie Barrett. Those issues were very, very evident. There was a number of times Jordie Barrett had the ball, and instead of giving the first pass, he kind of dummied the first half, delayed the pass, and was either tackled heavily by Pieter-Steph du Toit, resulting in an error, or just didn't find the man to give them enough time and space to make the break. And maybe part of that is down to nerves, the big moment, or the defensive pressure that was being put on by the Springboks. It's probably all of those factors. So very interesting. There are a couple of really interesting factors. Now, the All Blacks had success in the forwards. They made errors in the backs. And one other point I want to look at is there was a very, very low error rate from the forwards. And I bring that up because, we're really starting to paint a picture now that with 14 men and with a reduced number of forwards, the All Blacks had a lot of success here. They had a lot of opportunities. As I mentioned, they missed 2 kicks at goal. The error rate was high. And I thought a couple of times where the All Blacks pinned the Springboks down and were attacking through the forwards, they were starting to make real gains. They were being patient, and that was something they needed to continue with. But when they went to the backs, there were errors. And we probably have to give credit to the rush defense there because it put a lot of pressure on the All Blacks and it resulted in those errors. Now, a couple of other things we need to look at. Let us look at the defensive stats for the Springboks. Now, tackles made here, right? Damien Delende, 12. Good performance from him. He was robust in defense. Faf de Klerk, 15. Stephen Kitsoff, 13. Then we get into the big numbers. Pieter-Steph du Toit, 28 tackles. That is a mammoth effort. A huge amount of defensive work. And how many of those are on Jordie Barrett and really putting him under pressure, really stifling that All Blacks attack? I think that was somewhat innovative to have Pieter-Steph du Toit there sort of defending that channel, and he was just rushing out of the line and putting pressure on Jordie Barrett. Jordie Barrett had some opportunities, as I mentioned, to play a little bit more freely with the ball, but he kind of held things up rather than giving the early pass. And the other person I want to highlight here is Deon Fourie. 20 tackles, huge defensive load carried by him, and you just have to say, just fantastic work from him. Probably the other person we need to highlight here is Quagga. Quagga Smith resulted in 3 turnovers in his, I think it was 22 minutes of play. He resulted in 3 turnovers. And this is during an area of significant dominance from the All Blacks, right? The All Blacks are just applying pressure. They had the better of I think it was 65% of territory and possession advantage in the second half, and were constantly attacking. And there were just these moments where momentum was stalled because of the great work by either Peter Steph-Tutoy by putting on big hits, or Quagga Smith by getting turnovers. So, that ability to stifle the All Blacks' attack was a big reason for the victory here. And in the second half, we need to look at how the Springboks were placed under adversity. There was obviously Bongi Sam going down early. Dion Fourie forced to come in. Dion Fourie making 20 tackles and performing in the set piece as well. Then there were 2 yellow cards in the Springboks. So Sia Khaleesi goes down with a yellow card. It puts them under pressure for that 10 minutes. And what transpired during that 10 minutes is, the All Blacks passed up a penalty kick goal, an opportunity to go for 3, and they went for the try. Now, we'll look back on that and suggest maybe that was the wrong move, maybe they should have played it safe, that teams who haven't gone for the points, look at Ireland, that didn't take the penalty goals against the All Blacks, that ultimately they came unstuck in knockout rugby. So the All Blacks knew that that was probably an opportunity. They probably looked at that one and thought, we need to maximize the advantage. We've been down to 14 men. They're now down to 14 men. So let's pin them in the corner and go for it. At the end of the day, the All Blacks weren't good enough to score there, and I think that's testament to the forwards. I did think as they were, building phase play against the Springboks, they were having success in the forwards. Had they have stuck there, they might have broke them. We'll never know. But at the end of the day, as I've sort of already highlighted from an error perspective, the All Blacks were forced into errors, and from a defensive perspective, the Springboks had the better of the defensive work. And then we go to the Cheslin Kolbe yellow card. Obviously the knockdown resulting in his yellow card. And then we get what is a high-paced final 10 minutes of rugby, resulting in the All Blacks having a number of chances, including a penalty kick to win the game, and not quite getting there. And in the moment, they kept panning back to Cheslin Kolbe. And he had his head buried in his towel, in his jersey. He just couldn't look because he knew that the margins are so fine that he ends up putting his team under significant pressure, and he's just willing them on to get that win. And you translate that to Sam Cane in a similar position, head in hands, when he comes out with that red card. He understands the impact that it puts his team under, how significant those decisions are, and ultimately having to rely on your team in order to get you home. And in this occasion, the Springboks defense stood firm. The All Blacks unfortunately didn't take their chances in key moments, and Kolbe was ultimately vindicated. But when you think about that, 2 men sitting there on the bench or in the yellow card sin bin area, understanding the impact that they've made to their team and on the game, and one ultimately coming away with the win, the other man potentially remembered for that moment for the rest of his career. It just shows how fine these margins are. And that's where I want to sort of focus this discussion on, because that's what I see coming through in the numbers. And it is that both teams were placed under significant adversity. The All Blacks performed where they were not expected to perform. And that is by putting up a really good account of themselves in the forwards, in key areas in set piece, and by getting everything they wanted in terms of ball and play. Where things came unstuck for the All Blacks was in terms of errors and in terms of the error rate. And that's a big reason for that is the defensive pressure that was exploited by the Springboks, the fantastic performance by Peter Steph-Tutoy and Dion Fourie. And, the Springboks have been through this. They've been through the grind of a 1-point win, and were able to manage the game in order to hold their line and ultimately win it. So this is a game of margins. The team that deserved it in the end, they do say defenses win games, and the Springboks had the better of the defensive efforts. So I think at the end of the day, we can all celebrate the performance of both teams. The All Blacks gave a great account of themselves, and the Springboks did enough to win. And they did so in a brave fashion when faced with, the adversity of losing Bongi Sam, Dion Fourie coming in, and the fantastic defensive work that they displayed. And this will go down in history as one of the great games in our historic rivalry, right? And I think it should be remembered as one of the best because the amount of pressure, adversity, and key moments it came down to, the stakes that were on offer, it's just a huge, huge result. So again, congratulations to the Springboks. I know you guys will be celebrating that. I think there really is something in this ball and play discussion that the All Blacks will be looking to build on, to have greater success against some of these bigger teams. You get them working, you get them active, and you diffuse some of their strengths of the bigger forwards. I use the word bigger, but I should say, from a 7-1 perspective in particular, obviously having a large number of forwards. That's how I saw the game. But to announce the winners of the subscriber giveaway, I will post those comments here. In terms of displaying the winners. But yes, fantastic win. So the ultimate prediction, which was the closest, was a 12-10 prediction, as you can see here. And in terms of the second prize, as I mentioned, I like to reward people that have been around. I like to give back a bit to the subscribers. So if I'm in a good mood, if I've done pretty well, whether it's in terms of bets on the game or other factors, it's been a fantastic tournament. I like to give back to those who have supported me for a long time. So Chanel, shout out to you. I know you've been around for a long time and you've been a great supporter ever since. So congratulations on winning that subscriber giveaway. But one thing in the way that I'll close this out that really gave me a lot of positive sentiment at the end of the game. After all of that battle, players bruised, battered, cuts under the eyes. You look at Handre Pollard, you look at, Sia Khaleesi, just battered and bruised. Ethan de Groot had a big shiner as well. You look at all of that effort that went into that final. And then you look after the game. Players are embracing, genuinely enjoying each other's company. Families interacting. Sam Cane there with his children, obviously interacting with Damien Dialende and his kid. This is why our rivalry is so great. This is the values of rugby on display. And this is why we have the greatest rivalry in rugby. This is another chapter added to it, and long may it continue. I'm going to leave it there, guys. I hope you enjoyed that review. I covered a lot of detail. I waffled on for a good amount of time, but I just want to give you my thoughts and some of the insights around the stats. We'll leave it there. I'll be back with more very soon.